2013 was a huge year for Sony, with the new flagship console, the PlayStation 4, being released, Xbox shooting themselves in the foot with DRM policies, and having a bunch of first-party exciting IPs being showcased at E3 of the same year. Fans and detractors alike were ecstatic upon viewing many an astounding trailer, and they didn't let up after one or two titles, no, more were announced in a practically perfect presentation for the ages. In hindsight, titles such as Final Fantasy XV, Infamous Second Son, and Killzone Shadowfall were all hit and miss, but at the time the conference felt like a gigantic statement of intent. A focus on single player experiences, a focus on the new era of gaming, and amongst it all was an outlier. You see, all those games I've mentioned up to now are from well-established franchises. This was the 15th plus some iteration of Final Fantasy, the 3rd Infamous game, the 4th Killzone title. But there was this one new IP that got everyone hyped. Mysterious Victorian world flavoured with cyberpunk elements and shadowed enemies. And not too shabby mutton chops to match. The initial reveal trailer was intense and kept viewers on the edge of their seats. It smashed home the tone, setting, and art direction of the title. With almost photorealistic graphics, this was to be one of, if not the showcase of what the new PlayStation 4 could do. Then came the title, The Order 1886. The fans in the audience went wild. Everybody wanted to know more about this particular game. They were shown so precious little that it just whetted the taste buds even more. Who were Ready at Dawn Studios? How could they achieve these graphics on consoles? Would it live up to the hype? Well, join me on this journey through recent memory. Join me and we'll find the answers behind what happened to The Order 1886. PlayStation's Forgotten Triumph. Ready at Dawn began as a small game-making studio with potential, as most studios do. Their founding members Rui Arasuria, Andrea Pacino, and Didier Malenfant, having come from fellow game studios Naughty Dog and Blizzard, they set about creating a new gaming company with their combined knowledge. In 2003, Irvine, California, Ready at Dawn would come into fruition. Still having a good relationship with their former employers, the fledgling studio would develop and release a spin-off to a Naughty Dog series, Jak and Daxter, getting rid of Jak and keeping the latter Weasel as their main playable character. Daxter would release to fond reviews. A minor platforming spin-off released for the handheld PSP, Daxter provided a decent challenge for the team at Ready at Dawn. A challenge, but not one where much was on the line. It was an inoffensive game that some enjoyed, implying one of the oldest categories of gaming known to mankind. Nevertheless, the team had proven that they could take an existing franchise and rework it into something unique. A trait embraced by their second game, a spin-off to esteemed series God of War. For the PSP, again, God of War Chains of Olympus would garner high praise when it released in March 2008. It would achieve the highest Metacritic score for the PSP platform, a graphical marvel, a technical showpiece some would call it. Best looking game on the system, with a control scheme that navigated the murky waters of transitioning a game from a static console to a portable one with differing controllers. It won awards, it's still a terrific game to play. Then a shift from original creation saw them develop a port for the PS2 classic Okami. It would be ported to the highly popular Nintendo Wii platform and saw a release in April 2008. The change to motion controls would be a monumental task for the company, one they would succeed in once more. The Wii version had all the hallmarks of the original, and all the flair and critical acclaim. I want you to understand that this isn't easy. The motion controls were still a new medium, and the assets Ready at Dawn were given to complete the port were incomplete. In some cases, they would entirely have to recreate assets from scratch. As Surya put it, we started with no assets and literally reverse engineered the whole thing back to the Wii. A noble effort, but one which proved taxing on the developers. Due to Okami, Ready at Dawn would never work on the port the same way again, out of personal choice. So they went back to what they knew: God of War. 2010 saw the release of God of War Ghosts of Sparta on PSP. Another example of how Ready at Dawn could push hardware to its limits and then push it some more. In many ways, this title would outdo what was seen in the previous entry. In some ways, it failed to develop the franchise in a meaningful way. You see, Ghosts of Sparta took only 23 months of development to complete. Ready at Dawn used state-of-the-art technology to offer over 25% more gameplay than its predecessor, and that, perhaps, was a minor setback. Critics highlighted concerns with the lack of gameplay innovation. Ghost of Sparta was more God of War, which at the time was not necessarily a bad thing, but the consensus was starting to shift surrounding the series, and that slight repetitiveness that was slowly creeping into the franchise had reflected poorly on Ready at Dawn's new title. Nevertheless, that had not stopped them. Ghost of Sparta was still, by all accounts, a success. So much so that Ready at Dawn had earned the chance of bringing their PSP games to the mainline Sony console, the PlayStation 3. In September 2011, God of War Origins Collection was brought to the console, consolidating Ghost of Sparta and Chains of Olympus as they did so. With this, Ready at Dawn had proven that they could play at the big boy table, be among the frontliners in Sony's arsenal of developers. They had done their time, porting existing titles, creating spin-offs of popular franchises, then porting them again. 8 years had passed since their founding. 8 years without a failure. 8 years of success that showed them to be one of the most unique developers in the market at that time. Everything they touched turned to gold. Why not let them have their chance in the spotlight? Why not let them create something that was their own? Something that was truly special. Pitching the idea of a new IP in 2010, Ready at Dawn CEO Rui Rosaria confirmed that the company had already been working on a new game for many years prior. Through word of mouth, they had heard that Sony were hoping to release a new console, and they would answer that release with a release of their own. They were infatuated with creating alternate history, changing the history surrounding Victoria-era London, injecting a paranormal element into an industrious, smog-filled environment. They would use their own engine, the Rad Engine 4.0, to bring the world and its characters to life. Higher-ups listening to the pitch no doubt accepted the interesting idea with glee, and swift work soon began. Ready at Dawn wouldn't be ready to show anything until 2013. 2013 E3, to be precise. The whole event was a feisty affair. Two mainline consoles from two warring companies were the talk of the town. PlayStation and Xbox had been at odds for years. If you'd like to find out more, I've got a video for that, by the way. But all you need to know right now, though, is that Xbox took a couple of big swings on new policies that blew up in their face at that time. Before the PlayStation conference, the tension was palpable, and the relief was equally glorious. In their showcase, they showcased many a policy, future plan, and games. Quite a lot of games, but one caught my eye as it did others. The screen faded to black, and what happened next? Well, incredible would be too less of a word for it. A trailer played, one that enraptured audiences the world over. This was new. In an age of Call of Duties and FIFAs, this was interesting, thrilling even. The aesthetic, the weaponry infused with impossible technology, the mutton chop sideburns, and the mystery of it all. This was a company not known to the casual consumer, an IP that was only in the minds of a select few. So many unknowns. Adding to this, Ready at Dawn confirmed that the trailer's cinematics ran in real time. This was what the final game would look like. Details surrounding an intriguing story and tight campaign followed. We Are Asuria spoke again shortly after. We've been wanting to scale up for a long time, to do something that we've wanted to do from the very beginning when we started the company 10 years ago, and by the looks of it, they were executing both flawlessly. Speaking again, We Are Asuria stated that their intention was to push the PlayStation 4 to the very boundaries of what was possible, a system that wasn't even out yet. The game itself was to be gritty. We just love the fact that the Order 1886 feels dirty. But there was also pressure there. Ready at Dawn were finding work on a new IP to be tough. The company had apparently made a lot of bets in the beginning, focusing on elements of the game early on in the development process, hoping, not knowing, that they would all come together at the end. And the end was seemingly in sight, as the studio said that its release was only to be a year or so away, suggesting that 2014 was the penciled-in year. Founder of the studio, Andrea Bassino, stated that the graphic fidelity would go beyond that seen in the initial trailer. It would be a cinematic experience for all time. It just got better and better with every bit of news that came out. But here is where concerns start to arise. I've been talking about one trailer, and a whole lot more words said by people who want you to buy the game. A game that was announced in the summer of 2013 and was due to be released in the latter stages of 2014. So as we got deeper and deeper into the aforesaid year, you would expect to see something else from the company, something beyond words and promises and clarifications. You'd expect to see gameplay, and some had seen gameplay. In August 2013 at Gamescom, a behind closed door hands-off tech demo was shown. And what did they say about the game's performance? Well, it ran poorly with sudden sharp transitions, audio issues, and a lagging frame rate. A frame rate that was supposed to be locked to 30 FPS. These are, of course, issues, but ones that could be rectified in a year or so. Well, make that 2 years, as on May 27th, 2014, the Order 1886 was delayed until early 2015. A month later, new cinematics and some gameplay segments were shown, and my was it gritty. The playable character walked around a bit, did the shooty shoots, and battled to death against a spindly, werewolf-like creature. Also, Nikola Tesla was in the game, and also a release date was provided, February 20th, 2015. Industry writers were then offered a hands-on demo, but Ready at Dawn did not let them capture gameplay. That did little to stop videos arriving on the internet of the experience. Writers were stunned by the graphics, but underwhelmed when it came to the gameplay. There was a lack of exploration. The Order 1886 in its current state was akin to looking at a beautiful painting, but with little depth. At a later event, the same was said, one writer lambasting the game's QuickTime events. From these show and tell sessions, two things were abundantly clear. One, the game had serious flaws, and two, the game was still a technological wonder of a cinematic experience. Skepticism had married the hype in a tumultuous union that left people confused, yet still willing to get behind the game. But on the 15th of February, that goodwill would be shattered. A mere 5 days before the game's launch, a YouTube account going by the name of Play Me Through uploaded an entire playthrough of the game. Adding up all the video's runtimes, we determined that the game could be completed in a grand total of just under 6 hours, though an initially widespread article stated the runtime to be just 5 hours in error. This quite obviously did not help matters. What? Said the public? 5 hours? For a full-priced new title for the still shiny PlayStation 4 system? This is the supposed future of gaming? My Bioshock Infinite took 12 hours to complete at least, and you're telling me that this Disco Victo title is under half of that? Nonsense, they cried. Pure nonsense. There were some defenders of the game still, but the public discourse was very much so that Ready at Dawn, for all the bells and whistles, for all the graphical leaps, had dropped the ball. The game's cutscenes were extensive, and some gameplay moments were taken up by the much-loathed QuickTime events. Mystical setting and beautifully gorgeous animations and fidelity. It had a lot to love, it seemed, but a lot to hate in that current gaming climate. It was a nightmare situation for the dev team. All your hard work, advertising, blood, sweat and tears, you name it, it all went into this product. And now Now they were left with a damage limitation job before the game had even come out. To make the Order 1886 a smash hit with consumers from here was impossible. They would need a minor miracle, and quite often, my friends, miracles do not happen. Miracles did not happen. It's release day and the reviews are in. 6 out of 10s, 5 out of 10s, 7s, one extremely optimistic 95 out of 100. What you're looking at is one of the most middling games of all time. Reactions were mixed. The game being $60 on release did nothing to quell a quiet storm that brewed among potential fans. But it was worse than this, worse than the short playtime, unimaginative gameplay even for then standards, and pacing issues. It was worse because it had potential. Potential that saw it do decently well in sales in certain areas across the globe. Not many new IPs differ drastically from the rest in terms of tone, especially true back then, but this was to be one of the few. And it could have been. Its atmosphere, its uncultivated ideas were truly spectacular. It's a terrific universe, a thought experiment that lacked direction. Reviewers threw around terms like walking simulator, shallow, generic, standard. Needless to say, the reviews hadn't helped. Nor did an attempt to save face by permanently decreasing the price of the game by 33% just a month later. Sony and Ready at Dawn would never release sale records for the title, but there are relatively accurate estimates out there that predict the title to have sold between 1.6 and 1.7 million units. That's in total from the release date to today in 2023. For reference, The Last of Us sold 1.3 million units in its first week. That comes across as a put-down, but it isn't. Not really. I'm merely indicating the differences in a smash success and the Order 1886. High hopes, high expectations had not been met. It was to be the last big hitter Ready at Dawn would create with PlayStation and Sony's input. It's odd, strange even, what seemingly happened between Sony and Ready at Dawn following the Order 1886. The prized developer, the chosen one that stole one of the most well-known stages of gaming history, basically went radio silent on the AAA scene. Their next game, Deformers, would come 2 years later, and it's not quite like the Order 1886. Alright, it's nothing like it, and my, is it a complete 180. It also didn't do too great. Then the same year they double pivoted, pirouetted, 360 spinded into VR games for the Oculus Rift. I tell you what, they may have missed with their big swipe. My goodness, are these guys like gaming chameleons or something? They've done ports, they've created games on handheld, using motion controls, made games based on existing IPs, made their own IP, made a cute Animal Party game, and now they're on their VR kick. A kick which gave them a bit of success, so much so that they eventually got purchased in 2020 by Oculus Studios to become an all-but in-house VR title developer for them. So what went wrong with the Order 1886? Well, CEO Rui Rasuria would speak to the press quite openly in 2018 about the big swing they took with the game. Despite everything, they are super proud of the team's work on the title. They say that they are open to giving and have given advice to fellow game developers on the things that worked, the things that failed, all of it. They look to be a source of information for their peers, and good on them. When asked about the shortcomings of their game, Rasuria said that they had put too much focus on the building process of a new IP at the very beginning. They had wanted a solid base from which to springboard from. Tunnel vision for too long. He believes that people using their concerns surrounding the length of the game as the bottom line are unfair. More should be said about their achievements and not their shortcomings. Whether they are right in that opinion is inconsequential, but I believe if you don't appeal to a particular target market's wants at that particular time, then this reaction is always a risk. It's like me doing an Order 1886 video in 2023, it just wouldn't work. Going back to the game, perhaps research was done into what gamers wanted and that was either ignored or waylaid. Who can say? Who can know? The Order 1886 is a game with vast flaws and vast strong points. Is there enough to warrant a sequel? Perhaps. The trademark was renewed in December 2021, a show of intent, we can be certain I for one would love a new title within this world, either a sequel or a reboot. While it would seem that Ready at Dawn have moved on to different pastures, Sony and PlayStation may not have just yet. Every so often a fan or two will call out for something new, something generation defining, and that something could be the Order 1887 or something. The tale of the Order 1886 is not a sad tale, dear viewer. Not yet. At the most, it is disappointing. Disappointing that this magnificent world housed in a lackluster game was not expanded upon. The potential left unrealized, the characters lost to time. But lessons have been learned by fellow gaming companies, and that, at the very least, adds some value to this story. This has been the complete history of the Order 1886, PlayStation's Forgotten Triumph.